it seemed there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Back in October, Napoleon had finally been defeated at the Battle of Leipzig, ensuring the collapse of the French Empire east of the Rhine. The self-styled emperor was being slowly forced back towards Paris, with the coalition armies comprising Russia, Prussia, Austria and Sweden in hot pursuit. Reports coming through declared that the Duke of Wellington was already in southwestern France with his forces, having pushed French troops out of Spain, and was on his way to Paris. The news sheets were declaring the war all but over. Grace watched as her husband's carriage finally disappeared through the distant gates that formed the entrance and exit to the Blackmore estate. Although she and Nicholas had been married for nigh on 8 years, she never grew accustomed to his enforced absences, and in truth she knew it was the same for him. On this occasion, the situation in Europe was dragging him away from Blackmore, and finally the news was good. Napoleon was on the run, and it seemed as though it was only a matter of time before he would be forced to abdicate. Nicholas had been called to an urgent meeting of the Lords to be held at Westminster. It was not so bad. While Nicholas would be away for some weeks, she would be joining him in just over a month. Indeed, practically her whole family would be congregating for the first time since Patience's wedding to the Marquis of Guildford 18 months earlier. In the wake of that marriage, the cold shoulder previously offered to the entire Shackleford family by Queen Charlotte had finally been put to bed. Even more surprising was the unexpected shine Her Majesty had taken to Patience. Seating herself by the fire, Grace chuckled to herself. Though her sister had almost certainly not meant to be funny, Patience had on one particular occasion announced to Her Majesty that the Lord Stewart reminded her of their foxhound Freddie. So here they all were, back in Charlotte's good books. Until the next time. The only ones missing from the reunion in London would be Faith and Rowan, as her sister had recently delivered of a healthy baby girl. It was for that reason that Grace had been persuaded that 2 of the 4 weeks away from her husband would be most agreeably spent visiting Torquay and her new niece. The Duchess glanced over at her own daughter, busy cleaning the morning room windows with a napkin. Wincing at the revolting-looking smudges smeared across the glass, Grace reflected it was unfortunate that the napkin had earlier been used to remove the remains of Mrs. Higgins's prize-winning chocolate cake from the little girl's fingers. Almost 3 now, Jennifer was already exhibiting slightly alarming traits comparable to those displayed by the rest of the females in her family. Grace shook her head with a rueful smile. Really, Nicholas was entirely too soft on her. A sudden knock on the door brought her out of her reverie. "Come," she announced, pouring herself another dish of tea. The door opened to reveal Jimmy, her husband's, his general do-all, she supposed. Nobody seemed at all certain what it was that Jimmy actually did for Nicholas. When asked, the Duke generally laughed and winked. Grace knew her husband was very fond of the rascal and suspected he kept the boy close to ensure the rogue stayed on a path of, if not righteousness, then straight enough to keep his head out of the noose. The Duke's patronage also ensured that Jimmy's widowed mother had enough food on her table. She looked over at the boy, politely doffing his cap. In truth, Jimmy was no longer a lad. He was filling out, and at nearly 18, with hair the colour of old gold and cornflower blue eyes, he was already catching the eye of every unmarried female within a 5-mile radius.
"Begging your pardon, your Grace," he murmured. "Miss Charity charged me with delivering her note."
He held out an envelope.
"She said it were to go into no one's hand but your Grace's."
Grace frowned and held out her hand, wondering if her sister had a problem.